Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Today I'm going to be starting The Way of Kins by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Stormlight Archive series, so I'm really excited about it. All the books are massive though, like 1,000 pages per book, so this one may take a little bit to go through. It's a hunkalunk as I call it, but I'm very excited. It has like really great illustrations in it, it's got maps and stuff, like I'm really hyped about it. So from my understanding, this book is basically very, very high fantasy. And it follows around like 4 different characters who, like, one of them is supposed to like save everybody, one of them is gonna like doom everybody, and I don't know about the other 2, but follows around these 4 characters, and there's like a war going on and all of that. So that's pretty much all I really know about it. Like, I don't know too much, but I mean, I saw the name Brandon Sanderson and it's my boyfriend's favorite book. He's read it like a million times. So I'm very excited to read it and really just like dive back into Brandon Sanderson, because it's been a hot minute since I've read his books. Like, I read Mistborn when I was probably like 15 or something. So it's been a while and I'm gonna have to reread those because I don't really remember too much what happened. But so let's just jump right into it and start reading. So I'm about a little bit more than 200 pages into The Way of Kins, and you can tell, like, because of the size of this book, that's not even like halfway. That's nothing. This is a big guy. So because of the size of this book and because it is the first in the series, there is a lot of world building, there's a lot of character introduction. Like 200 pages in, I finally met like the 4th character that's like mentioned on like the little back summary there. And so I really like it though. Like, it's not one of those like really hard to understand world buildings. It's really well done. It's really like, it's just like, I think that world sounds very beautiful. Like, it's well thought out, it's well constructed, it's well written. Like, it really kind of grabs you when you go in there, and like it starts off with like some great action scene, and like it's really just like setting the premise for what the book is all about and like how it's going to be moving forward. So for the characters that I've met so far, there's the assassin named Seth, or Seth. I'm not entirely sure if you pronounce like the Z in there, but I think it's Seth, because like why else would you put a Z there? Either way, he's the assassin, and he's pretty much like the catalyst for like the whole story, because it's not really a spoiler, it's literally like the first page of book 1. And I say book 1 because there's like, it's like book 1, book 2, there's different types of books which are different like parts, different kinds of sections in here. And so book 1 focuses just kind of like, you have like that prologue. Well, it was interesting. It had like this, and then it had a prologue, and then it had book 1, and then it had an interlude, and then now I'm in book 2. So there's like a bunch of different kind of stuff in here, but it's really neat. So I was talking about Seth. He's really interesting to me, and I mean, I haven't really seen much of him. I've just seen him in the beginning, but the reason he's the catalyst is because he is basically hired to kill this kin. And this was really great because like you get to learn about like the powers of the world, like the Shardblades, and like what the Stormlight is. And it was just like a really great way to kind of like set the scene, get you into the world, and understand like the dynamics and the magic of it. And it did a great job just like with the fight scene of him and the kin at the beginning. And so that was super nice. It was super cool. And his character is basically like, doesn't like killing people, but he's an assassin, and the only person he's not allowed to kill is himself. And so he's super like upset about everything he has to do, but he can't really do anything about it because like he's very honorable. If he's hired to do something, he's gonna do it. If you tell him to like, I don't know, kill somebody, he will, but also if you tell him to like eat 100 eggs, he would probably, like he would 100% eat 100 eggs. And then in book 1, we learn about these two characters. One of them is Kaladin, and then the other is Shallan. So Kaladin, I think he's my favorite right now. He's basically, he was like a surgeon, and then he was also a soldier, and like everyone thought he was like a really lucky soldier, but then events happen and he ends up becoming a slave. And so following him around as he's just kind of like navigating the world, like having to do things he obviously doesn't want to do. And he kind of encounters this like kind of spirit thing named like Sin. I hope I'm saying that right again. And she kind of like floats around, and she's interested as well because her kind isn't supposed to be able to have thoughts or like know stuff or remember stuff. They're kind of like prankster spirits in a way. And she started off like that, but then her character's kind of like evolved, and at times she's like, wait, why do I know that? And she's like, I shouldn't know that. I shouldn't know that. I shouldn't know that. Like, it's really cool. So I really love just following around like Kaladin and like the spirit story. I think that's really cool. And then for Shallan, her character is interesting too, because basically her dad had a ton of debt and he passed away. And if people find out that he passed away, then they're gonna come claiming their debt, which involves her and her siblings. So obviously like they can't have that, or their whole house will be like pretty much destroyed. And so what she's trying to do is trying to convince this scholar to take her on as a ward so she can actually steal, she can steal from this scholar and sell the item that she's looking for. So it's really interesting like how that's kind of working as well. So in part 2, where I am, or book 2, we're introduced to 2 new characters. There is Dalinar and Adolin, and they're father and son. And so the dad, Dalinar, he's like really popular, famous, like warlord, but everyone says he's kind of gone downhill since then. And he's basically protecting the new kin, who's like, we know that the assassin killed the kin, and this is like the kin's son, and he's very reckless and pretty much like a nuisance, to be honest. Like he's just causing trouble all the time. And so this guy's like protecting him and all of that, but he keeps on getting these like, not like visions, but he kind of hears in his head like, you need to unite them, you need to unite them. And he's like, I don't know what that means, like what's going on. So that's kind of like part of his story. And then his son is like, can wield one of the Shardblades, which is like one of the really powerful weapons that if you touch any person or creature with it, it will destroy that kind of part of it. And he's really like heroic and interesting. He also has a brother whose name starts with an R, but I can't recall it at the top of my head at this moment. And his brother is more like the scholarly kind of type, whereas this guy's more like the warrior type. So it's really interesting just to kind of like see their perspectives and how they're interacting in the world, as well as like how the son sees the dad and how the dad sees the son. That's really cool. So yeah. So yeah, I would say I'm still in the introductory period of this book. Like nothing super big has happened yet. It's just kind of like small events that are happening with the characters as we kind of get to know them a little bit more, but I'm enjoying it. So I'm going to continue to read, and I'm going to update you, I think around the halfway part, but with this book this size, I have no idea, to be honest. Like usually I would update you at the halfway part, but like if something like amazing or something really interesting like happens that I have to like tell you about immediately, then I'll update you before then, but tentatively when we hit the middle. So I'll see you then. So I'm about halfway through the Way of Kins, and I think that it's starting to ramp up now. Like a lot of the introduction stuff is done, and now stuff is starting to fall into place, which is pretty exciting. So where we left off was with like Dalinar and Adolin, those guys, the father and son, and just kind of how they're navigating through there, and like with the visions. So at first I thought like the visions that Dalinar was having were more like just kind of like the words in his head, but no, he actually has like these full-on visions where he feels like he's actually there and he's like in the body of somebody else, which was really cool because there was this really good scene where he was like way like really early days of the world that weren't even like recorded in history, and he was like some random farmer named Herb, and there were like these wiggly inky wineskin materialed monsters there, and like they had like the knights pop in with all their like glowingness and like fighting. And so that's interesting because like, why is he getting these visions? Like, they're not just visions. Like, why is he getting these like out of body, in other body experiences? Like, is he actually seeing this happen, or is he just kind of going senile? And no one knows the answer to that, obviously, except for the author. And so we'll see where that guy's story goes. And so like with all the parts, they always end in like such a good cliffhanger. You're like, whoa, what's gonna happen next? And then we had the interlude, and something really interesting happened to Sesseth in the interlude. And I think it's really like ramping up because like he's now kind of controlled by somebody who really understands how to use him. Not just for like petty crime or murder or anything like that. No, whoever is just like got him now definitely has way bigger plans in mind. And so like those two big events happen, and then bam, not focusing on any of those characters, because this next part that I'm in, part 3, focuses on Kaladin and Shallan. So very similar to like how the first part was. And so I actually really like that. Like I really like that each of the kind of like parts focuses on specific characters, because so you can like understand them better, you can kind of follow them around a little easier. Because I find like when you have a big multicast, it's like, what was that guy doing again? Oh, okay, there's this guy. 100 pages later, oh yeah, there's that guy who's doing this thing now and that thing. But this makes it way more easy to follow, because you know that this part is just going to focus on Kaladin and Shallan and kind of follow them along. And then like the next part, it always says like the names of who it's going to be following. And I think that that's really good, because like I get very lost when it's a big cast of people. And so before I paused and realized, oh, I'm halfway through the book right now, I have to update you. Something so cool happened with Kaladin. And like, let's just say after he and his like bridge 4 turned the bridge sideways and he had that punishment, that's where I'm at. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like what does that mean? Like, what is going on? Like, ah! So yeah, I'm really excited to see where that goes, because he is my favorite character at the moment. Hopefully, like, when I finish the entire series, I won't be like, oh, I can't believe he was my favorite character, but he's my favorite character so far. So yeah, I'm gonna continue to read, and I will update you when I update you next. I'm trying to figure out like what makes the most sense, because this book, it's kind of divided like books within the book. So maybe I should be updating you every book. I think that's what I should do. I think that makes the most sense. So I'll probably be doing that moving forward. I know this part is kind of like all over the place, but when I read the next book, we'll kind of have a bit more structure, because I just didn't realize how this book was structured. But yeah, I'll update you when I get to the next book within the book. So I just finished part 3 in this book, and I'm just about to start part 4, which this is usually when I update you anyway. So yeah, when it comes to this Brandon Sanderson, like this series, I will be updating you like per part, just because it makes more sense, because it's like focuses on different characters. And so the part that I just finished focused only on Kaladin and Shallan, and like stuff is happening. Like it's interesting because like it's Kaladin and Shallan, but it's also like childhood of Kaladin, and so like kind of like following up to like how he ended up, like where he ended up with the Bridgeman and stuff. And because like I wondered about that, like when I'm reading like the beginning, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's a bad guy. Wait, what happened? Like, why is he where he is now? Like, why is he a Bridgeman? But like now it's making sense. Like I finally got to the part that like explains that, and like how he got branded and everything. It's like this poor child. And like the storm scene, and like with the spheres, like there's cool stuff happening. And then for Shallan, like when it comes to like the Soulcaster and the strawberry jam, like all of this stuff, I'm like, what? I'm like, I wonder what happens next. But like because the parts focus on different characters per part, except for Kaladin, I wonder if he's the author's favorite, I don't know. But her part of the story ended on such a cliffhanger, and then I'm like, okay, yeah, but in the next chapter, I'm sure. But then I flip the page and it's like, interlude. I'm like, no, I have to wait to find out what happens with Shallan, because like big stuff happen and like consequences of actions. It's also really cool to see Adolin kind of like cross over to where Kaladin is, but like we know both of those characters and their stories, and then just like seeing it from like Kaladin's perspective, it's like, oh, there's that guy, like whatever kind of thing, and it's like, oh, but that guy's actually pretty good, like he's a pretty good guy. But I love that. Like, I'm really excited for the characters to eventually like cross paths again and like meet each other and maybe group up and become a team, you know, all that good stuff. So I'm really excited to see like where that's gonna go. So that's where I am right now. I'm about to start part 4, and that focuses on Dalinar, Adolin, Kaladin, and Navani, who's like the widow of the kin. So I'm really excited to start this because like with Dalinar, like very similar to like Shallan's story, ended on this like big cliffhanger, and then it's like you gotta wait and find out what happens. So now it's gonna be like focusing in on him and like his story and stuff. So I'm really excited to like see where that goes. So I'm going to continue to read, and I think that this is probably the final part. Like, it looks like it's probably the final part of this book. So I'll probably update you when I finish this book or at the next part, but I'm pretty sure like the book will be done when this is the final part. So I'll see you then. I just finished The Way of Kins by Brandon Sanderson. This is the biggest book that I've ever read in my entire life. My previous biggest book that I ever read was Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas, which is the final book in the Throne of Glass series. That one was like 950 pages. This one was 1,007. So it took me an entire week to read this. However, despite it being so gigantic, it didn't feel like a gigantic book for the most part. Like, there were some times where like it felt like a big gigantic book where I'm like, feels like some stuff's kind of being dragged on, but that was just like a little bit towards like the end. So like in part 4, I found that it was dragging on a little bit more than it should, but the rest of the book was paced like really, really well. And all of the dun 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 moments happened in the last 100 pages, and gotta say, like, I was definitely surprised about some events that happened, and that's what I love. I love when like you can't guess it. Like, it's just like, whoa, like what, that's what's happened? And this book had a lot of that, especially in the last 100 pages. It's like, you think one thing, and it's like, yeah, but like some stuff you kind of expect, but like not really. But like this was a really, really good high fantasy epic story. And now that I'm done the first book, it's pretty much like that first book is really just like setup for you to get to like what the whole series is actually about. So I'm really excited about the second book, and I'm gonna have to pick it up as soon as possible because the book just ended on a note where it's like the real story is about to begin. In my mind, like, this book is like the prologue of the series. Like, that's what it is. And so I would give this book a total of 4 stars because it was really well written. It didn't feel like a really big book, like the high fantasy, like everything about it. But I wouldn't give it like 5 stars because like I'm not like obsessed with it like I am with some other books that I read. Like recently I read the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, and I was absolutely obsessed. Like, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Yeah, I was honestly like addicted to it. I don't know I don't know why, but I was. And so I'm not like absolutely obsessed with this one. I think it's good, but I don't think I'm obsessed with it. But I mean, there's a bunch more books, and I think that it's really just getting started. So like, I'm really excited, especially because like Brandon Sanderson is such a good world builder. Like, I have never seen world building quite like his. It really does feel like he has been to this world and watched all of this stuff happen and then came back to our reality and wrote about it. Like, that's how good it is. It feels, it's incredible. That's what it is. His world building is so incredible. And like the way he like paces out it's like, you don't have like just a bunch of characters doing a bunch of things. It's like kind of divided within these different parts. So it's like, okay, these characters are doing this. This is kind of contained. And then like when you're being introduced to the world, it's not just like overwhelming. It's like super, super subtle throughout the entire book. Like, for instance, it's very, very subtle. So in one of the characters' backstories, his mom was like knocking these like stalagmite things off of her roof because when it rains and then it hardens, it becomes kind of like this creme material, and so they have to whack it off because it weighs down the roof. It's kind of like icicles, but like it's just like so subtle the way that he does it. It's like, it's not like this is the world and da 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 da. It's like some stuff happens, get a little bit of context, like even in like the prologue when you see Sesseth and he's like using like his powers and like he's sticking to walls and stuff, and it's like really subtly but well done in explaining like what the world is like, and the whole book is like that. So it's not just like suddenly everything's thrown in your face, like you're really eased into it. So I enjoyed it, and I'm really excited to get the second one. I don't have the second one on me right now, so in the meantime I'm going to be reading Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. I do like to kind of break up, like when I read a really, really big book like that, read a couple smaller ones that don't really take brain capacity. This one's tiny compared to that one. So I'll be reading this one next. While I'm reading that, I will have to pick up the second book in the Stormlight Archive series because I really want to know what happens. So if you're interested in watching me read Meet Me at the Lake or the second book in the Stormlight Archive series, or any other books that I end up kind of added on to my list, definitely hit subscribe and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. And if you haven't already, it'd be really great if you could hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!